Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, liebe Freunde, wir nähern uns der Zielgeraden, aber wie es halt nun mal beim Media Lab der BLM so ist, save the best for last, wir haben noch so richtige Kracher für euch. Wenn ihr sowieso gerade am Twittern seid, dann nochmal der Hinweis, bitte verwendet New Publishing, damit wir eure Fragen auch rausfiltern können, oder eben bei Slido auch hier nochmal in dem Event Room New Publishing. Ja, ganz wichtig, dass ihr dort eure Fragen reinpostet. Die könnt ihr dann upvoten oder downvoten und dann haben wir hier hoffentlich klasse Fragen hier auch aus dem Auditorium. Wir haben uns heute den ganzen Tag über mit neuen Wegen des Journalismus schon beschäftigt im Videobereich. Wir haben geguckt, irgendwie, was Virtual Reality schon bietet oder ob man das machen muss. Wir haben über Dinge wie Snapchat und so weiter geredet. Wir reden jetzt über die zwei wichtigsten Themen, glaube ich. Einmal, ja, wir müssen über das Geld reden. Das kommt aber gleich. Vorher reden wir über etwas, was wir oft gerade als Journalisten am wenigsten auf dem Schirm haben. Ist leider so. Das Publikum, the audience, the people formerly known as audience. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass sie den ganzen weiten Weg aus Washington hierher gekommen ist, um uns heute also zu erklären, was sich bei der Washington Post getan hat. Da gab es ja so einen leichten Turnaround in den letzten Jahren, das wird sie uns gleich erzählen, wie man bei der Washington Post das Thema Audience vielleicht neu denkt, das werden wir gleich erfahren. Vorher aber gibt es einen Lightning Talk und ich bin sehr froh, dass er heute hier ist, denn Gillmor, er ist ein, wie soll man sagen, ja, Early Adapter, was digitale Medien angeht. Er hat sich mit dem Thema digitale Medien schon sehr früh befasst, ist langjähriger Journalist gewesen. Er schreibt mehrere Kolumnen für unterschiedliche Zeitungen, hat auch Bücher zum Thema Digital Media geschrieben. Er unterrichtet an der Walter Cronkite School for Journalism an der Arizona State und wir sind sehr, sehr froh, dass er uns eine Einführung gibt, wie er das Thema Audience Development sieht, denkt. Lasst euch nicht verunsichern, es wird unterschiedliche Positionen in diesem Slot geben. Da wird nicht immer alles deckungsgleich sein, was wir dann nachher mit der Washington Post hören, aber genau das fanden wir so spannend, genau darüber wollen wir dann auch im Anschluss diskutieren, deswegen macht bitte mit, schickt uns eure Fragen, wenn euch irgendetwas nicht einleuchtet oder ihr wissen wollt. So, without further ado, please welcome Dan Gillmor.
Good afternoon. I am really delighted I can be here, and I'm going to speak very briefly, partly to have lots of time for your questions after we're both done. Beth, Diaz is going to give you a lot about data and analytics and things that are going on at the Washington Post. By the way, I want to, on behalf of Americans who believe in reality, I want to thank the Washington Post for its journalism during this political campaign, which may be saving America for those who believe in reality. So, so we've dispensed with that topic, I hope. So I have an abiding belief that in audience development, that engagement with the audience is key to that. I don't have a lot of data for what I'm showing you, but I do have a lot of things I've been studying and looking at in this world of bringing the audience into what we do, and it stems from some things that have been going on for the last few years. In key ways, this notion that the former consumer is now a creator at some level, and more importantly, because these tools are inherently collaborative, the people who are creators are becoming collaborators, and that could play to our benefit as journalists, and I hope that we do more of it. And it comes from my conviction about this starts with something that I said, it must be 20 years ago or more, that it became obvious to me one day as a journalist that my readers knew much more than I did, and that was an opportunity to do better journalism. And I did a lot with that. And it also became clear that news and media were not or should not be in the future where we were heading into not be lectures, but rather conversations, and that we could do so much with that. These are obvious today. They weren't so obvious back then. I wonder if media organizations are doing enough with this, and I think that the key things we have to ask are, well, ask. We start with that. Then we bring people into the work at some level that treats them not as journalistic equals, but as people who are participants in our process, and that's hugely beneficial, and that doing this is part of what we can do that will lead to more trust, both our trust of our audience, which we tend to be quite suspicious of, and audience trust of us as journalists. We need a lot more of that, and maybe this can help. So I'm going to give you some examples of things that I think are in this category of engagement that leads to audience development. This is at least a decade old. A newspaper in Florida in the US noticed something going on with local utilities, the water and sewer department, and they, on a forum, asked their readers what they were seeing. And they were just flooded with information from their readers and did some investigative journalism as a result that led to changes in the local government. They didn't do it with fancy technology, they just asked, and it worked. The Guardian, on the expense account reports from members of parliament a few years ago, the Guardian was beaten to this story by the Telegraph. But the Telegraph was doing the story in the traditional way. One story a day based on what they knew. The Guardian said, well, let's put the stuff online and ask the readers what they can find that's really good. And then did their own, caught up quickly, and in fact went ahead. Some newer things that are happening that I find very exciting. This is in Oakland, California, near where I live. A Center for Investigative Reporting there is working across media boundaries in profoundly interesting ways, but key part of this is asking the people in the community to help them find the things that go into the reporting that they're doing. And they're coming up with some extraordinarily interesting results. There's a project called Hearken, which is designed to help news organizations get information and feedback before stories are done. Now, you can't tell everyone what you're working on ahead of time on every story, but you can, I believe, on most. And Hearken is a way to bring people in. This is from Australia, and it's produced some fascinating results. Maps are one of the ways we work increasingly well with helping our audience help us. And this is a project that was done in the East Coast of the US to track some of these cicadas that migrate, and they were seeing what was happening. And this is all from people in the communities who know. This is one based on pure data, but it only starts with government databases. Then they're asking, this is on healthcare. I always have to explain to people in Europe that in America we have this weird system. You know that we don't do what other civilized countries do, but so it becomes necessary for us to find out what things might cost. I don't want to get into that. But the fact of people now putting in data about what their costs are to add to the government databases is proving to be quite useful. In journalism, I've often seen, at least in development of tools and some technologies, a sort of, well, not invented here attitude. Well, we didn't do that. A lot of journalists won't do a story that someone else has done because it's been done, the scoop mentality, but it also applies here. But I want to suggest we should not just be looking at what our colleagues and competitors are doing in journalism, but outside the business, because people are doing some very interesting work that applies, I think, nicely to journalism if we're only willing to use it. So this is from the UK, Fix My Street. it's a wonderful project, and what it's doing is to connect people in the communities with the people who can actually fix their streets. But with this middleman operation that's done, and more importantly, while this has had great results there, they've open sourced the technology behind it, and it's now spreading around the world. People are installing this, but not so many journalism organizations are, and I don't understand that. I think something like this should be on every local news organization's site, or at least there should be a partnership of journalism organizations. This is to the benefit of everybody, and it's part of the journalism process of informing our communities about what's happening with a crucial part of what's in our communities, and of course that's the local infrastructure. It may not be Panama Papers kind of sexy journalism, but it's very, very important journalism. So this is one that was using that technology and based in Zurich, and they're getting some interesting results that show that this can be applied widely. Another project that could be taken widely is from something called Ushahidi. They started with mapping crisis situations. And this goes beyond simply informing a community. What Ushahidi did, working with people in a variety of parts of life, including volunteers at the Tufts School of Diplomacy, Fletcher School of Diplomacy at Tufts University in Massachusetts, getting reports, in this case text reports, from the ground after that horrible earthquake in Haiti a few years ago, getting the information to the people through this route of information comes from here, it goes there, they vet it, look at it, and then get it back into a map. The people who could help were getting their best information from this, not from a government agency. Journalism at some level can do these kinds of things if we want to. And then the last example of these I want to give you is a project that's just marvelous from Japan. It's called Safecast, where after the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdowns in 2011, people outfitted other people with Geiger counters measuring radiation, and they're going around northeast Honshu Island in the Fukushima area and measuring things and producing extraordinarily detailed and most important, useful information about what's happening there. Again, this is all available as open source technology. Any of us can use it, and I think many of us should, for doing, combining human beings with data and with machines in ways that produce media that of a kind we've never seen before, but we need to see more of. It does come down to trust in a lot of ways. I think these things build trust. And one last thing I'll show you is the Coral project that's foundation funded to try and make comments good again, though that's going to be difficult. This is one way to do it, and I think this helps build trust from reader to journalist and back, and we can do more of these things. So I'm arguing again that engagement is key to audience development. It's obviously not the only thing, and you'll hear a lot more from Beth about the great stuff they're doing. But I want to emphasize how important I think that is. And with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Dan, thank you so much. We're going to talk. Yes. Okay. So, wir werden mit Dan gleich diskutieren. Vorher möchte ich euch aber, wie angesagt, schon Beth vorstellen. Beth Diaz ist verantwortlich dafür, was bei der Washington Post in den letzten Jahren so passiert ist. Sie war schon da, bevor Jeff Bezos also sich die Washington Post unter den Nagel gerissen hat, und sie ist heute noch da. Und es hat sich tatsächlich eine Menge getan in diesen letzten 2,5 Jahren. Und was sich dort getan hat und was Beth dazu beitragen konnte, das erleben wir jetzt. Wir sind sehr stolz, dass sie da ist. Beth Diaz.
Thank you so much. I don't entirely know what was just said, but I heard some enthusiastic commentary, and I heard Jeff Bezos' name. And I have to say, it has been sort of an insane couple of years at the Washington Post. And, you know, since Jeff has bought us, we have just been, last month we had 83 million people in the United States reading us, according to ComScore. Is going to be a lot higher this month. So between kind of Jeff buying us, between the election, it's been a really crazy ride, and audience development has been a big focus of it. And the last thing is, before I kick in, audience development means a lot of different things. So I can explain in my particular case what it means. So we have a whole team in the newsroom that does audience development in the sense of it really is audience development. They're posting things on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, etc. I'm not that group. I'm sort of thinking at a higher and more data-driven level. What platforms should we be involved with? What strategies should we take in terms of what content we produce where? And looking at the analytics behind it. And that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So I'm a big believer, and I think we've proven it at the Post, that data can drive customer behavior. In the not-so-recent past, what data was really a school report on how you did. Oh, we got a C in terms of getting people to come back, but we got an A+ in people watching our videos. What we're doing now is using data to predict future behavior and drive company actions by identifying who those users are, driving those users' engagement, predicting who is more or less likely to pay, and then converting readers into purchasers. So sounds great, huh? Straightforward. Let's just get some people onto the site and turn them into paying subscribers. But, well, it's actually really hard even if there wasn't this but there's some extra buts now. The world has become far more complex. Before, it seemed really complicated because we had desktop, tablet, mobile, and we had people coming on our apps. And if you're us, you might have more than one app for every platform. So you could have had as many as 6 different versions of how people coming or reading your content. Now that seems like a idealistic, simpler time when everything was only on 6 platforms. This is what the world looks like now. You have a whole slew of ways in which people are coming to our site, be it Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. I've learned all these new things. We do live streaming, Tumblr, etc. And on top of that, those people are at least coming to our mobile or to our websites or our apps. We have this whole universe of distributed content. We're on all of these, and there's definitely more. But I cannot tell you from an analytics perspective, from a strategic perspective, how much more complicated this makes things, even though it's made our universe so much bigger. So, no matter where they are or how they're getting to you, knowing your users is absolutely critical to influencing their behavior. But of course, this is increasingly complicated in a growingly distributed environment. So one of the things, and I can't say we're 100% on this, but generally speaking, we push hard if we're going to be on a distributed platform, if we're going to look at alternate ways of getting people to us, we make sure that we have the ability to track and identify those people and their behavior. Otherwise, they sort of live out there in the ether, and it becomes very, very difficult to track and influence their behavior. The other challenge is out-of-the-box solutions fail to identify the source of much of our traffic. Do folks know the word dark sideways or dark social traffic? Does that mean something? All right, let me speak to it for a second. So this chart is coming from Omniture, but you have something similar whether you're using Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, and it shows the path by which people are coming. So that blue that you see at the top, in Adobe, it says typed bookmarked, and that sounds like people interpret that as people that are coming directly to your site. So you'd say, oh, over the past year, the percentage of people that are just coming to the Washington Post has actually grown, which you would think is a great thing. But what it's actually indicating is a tracking issue. So as you have people coming from these distributed platforms, coming from newsletters, coming from email, many of them show up and we have no way, just with an out-of-the-box solution, of knowing where they're coming from. So it's actually not that the percentage of people that are coming directly from our site is grown. It's rather people that are using WhatsApp to communicate or opening things up from an email newsletter or things like that are growing, which means we know less and less about who the people are with the out-of-the-box solution, hence the term dark sideways or dark social. We have now succeeded in identifying 80% of previously dark traffic. And I really can't emphasize enough my belief that putting some effort into this is worthwhile when we start talking about how do you migrate people from one-time unique visitors to becoming paying subscribers. So you are going to have people that are truly coming to your site directly. And the way that we've isolated that is we've assumed that if you show up and it shows as direct on WashingtonPost.com or on one of our section fronts or maybe a cartoon or crosswords, you are probably truly directly coming to the site. But if you suddenly appear on a page, www.WashingtonPost.com/thefix/Donald Trump fights with Kelly Conway and it's getting ugly /blank blank blank, you have probably not typed that into your browser window. So you're getting that from somewhere, even if we don't know where. So then we have to figure out who are all those other people. So one thing is make sure to tag, for us, and we're going to talk about it in a second, newsletters and emails is a really critical part of our business. And as we've been continuing to do work on this, we realize a lot of our dark traffic is coming from emails. So where possible, for sure on your own products, see if you can do it with people you're partnering with, tag your email products, tag your newsletters so you can see that that's where people are coming from. You also want to, and I touched upon this, tag alternate platforms. We spent a lot of time working with the Facebooks and the Flipboards and the such of the world to make sure that we have as good data as possible in order to understand the behavior of people off-site as well as on-site. And it's not perfect, I promise you, and ultimately, back to the trade-offs of data, you have to decide, are you willing to, what are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up information about the user? Are you willing to give up, that additional audience, if you can't get it? And, there's no right answer. You have to figure out what is the potential lift you're going to get in revenue, in readership, is there a path forward, et cetera, in making that decision. The other thing is we've had some success pinpointing unique identifiers from incoming traffic. I think we were one of the few before Spotlight cut over, so it deep linked into Apple News. We actually successfully identified the traffic coming from Apple News because there were analysts on my team literally just going through the raw log file data, and they saw some curious identifiers, and then we were able to map back and say, aha, we found that as being Apple News traffic. And then finally, we've created a custom solution to tie users to previously dark platforms. We still have dark traffic, but this has really helped us in terms of identifying where to put our resources. For example, one thing we found in the last area, we thought one-to-one messaging, so Facebook Messenger, the iOS messaging, WhatsApp might be driving a significant amount of our dark traffic. It turns out it's not, which is a good thing because it's a lot harder to influence 10 million individual users versus a few users that might be driving a lot of referral traffic. So I agree with Dan, driving engagement is a good thing, and anything you can do to drive people to consume more and come back more often is going to pay off, both immediately in terms of you're going to get more ad revenue, and in the medium term, if you can get these people so engaged that you can convert them to paying subscribers. And I'm sure people in the audience know, but just as a reminder, the Washington Post, like most publications in the United States, has a metered paywall. So you can consume 5 pieces of content, and there are various loopholes, but then you're going to have to pay. So we try and hook them in and then get them to pay. So how do you do that? So first of all, what do we mean when we talk about engagement? So we track readers throughout the engagement funnel. And this is actually something that we did a couple of years ago, but it still works, And basically, we've had a big focus on unique visitors, and I should point out this data is not real. We have a big focus on, as I see the cameras going up and then the cameras going down. So, but I rounded up, by the way. So, but anyway, you start at unique visitors, and one thing we saw as we saw as we started to grow and as our awareness grew over the past 3 years, we definitely saw a lead in unique visitors. We were growing unique visitors faster than we were growing some of these others, but now we've reached an environment where we've caught up. And the other thing is, this is a very leaky funnel. It's not like everybody's going to march straight down from unique visitor to subscriber, but it's still a worthwhile way to look at it. So first of all, we talk about unique visitors. And then second, we talk about early engaged with an emphasis on early. Basically, that's somebody that comes twice in a month. And I promise you, a very large percentage of people with all the ways to read our content now have no idea they're reading Washington Post content, even if they come twice in a month. That's why we talk about potential subscribers, which is 5+ visits for 2 months running. I like to think if you've come 10 times in 2 months, you actually have some sense that you've read content from the Washington Post, but you still may be a ways away from subscribing. Then we have virtual subscribers that have made their way around our various loopholes and are consuming quite a bit of content from us, even if they're not paying. And again, it's a balance between closing those loopholes and losing your audience. And so, we have done things to progressively tighten, but we still let people, there are means by which you can read a decent amount of our content and not pay. We have a number of ways that you can subscribe. We have a partnership with over 350 news publications in the United States to offer their print subscribers free access to our content. And then anybody who's a print subscriber gets free content as well. And then finally, paying subscribers. And even though these numbers are not real, and I'm not going to share any exact numbers, I can tell you that the funnel looked like this in terms of growth. And now it's looking much more like this. We're over 100% year over year. The growth rate is true, and then this is a couple of months old. We're over 100% growth rate, and the election and our work on it has borne fruit in terms of people committing to pay. So everything I said sounds great, but of course, when you have people reading all your content on Facebook Instant, or if you have people reading your content on Apple News, they may never even hit your website, and they may never even hit your paywall. So what do you do to move readers down the engagement funnel? We still get, and I don't want to focus, this is part of the topic, distributed content is important, but you don't want to focus on that to the exclusion of the people that are coming to your site directly. So on site, the Post encourages deeper engagement through page design. One thing that we've actually really shifted away from in the last few years is it used to be that the right rail was the bastion of people trying to make money. We were selling everything on the right rail. We had ads, you could buy trips, you could buy classes, you could get jobs, etc. And it just became incredibly cluttered, and we've made a conscious shift away to focus our page, other than ads, other than kind of having beautiful, engaging ads, about really driving people to consume more content. So we have things on the right rail, and then the recommendations, which are down at the bottom, and we've had a great deal of success with in terms of driving recommendations. So we use a proprietary technology called Clavis, which has led to a significant lift in engagement. So we actually provide recommendations based on who you are, the content you're reading, how you've interacted with the site in the past to deliver you recommendations that are actually custom fit to you and the content you're reading at the time. And the Clavis technology that's powering the recommendation engine now significantly outperforms the off-the-shelf solutions that are out there in terms of recommendation engines. So I want to talk about email. I mentioned it in passing, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is to us, particularly in a distributed environment. And this gets back to knowing who your users are and getting them to engage. So in the past year, we've actually added 1.5 million newsletter subscribers, and we've more than doubled traffic from newsletters. And we've done this, you can see, if I go back for a second, You can see down here on the Daily 202 newsletter, we have lots of signups on the site, but we've also gotten very aggressive in terms of asking people to give us their email if they want to read content from us. We call it drawbridge, and basically what this is this actually, it's a wall. So we no longer have a reg wall, but we intermittently, and we don't do it very often, and we don't do it for a ton of our audience, actually say, if you want to read our content, you have to give us your email. And then we proceed to sign them up for one of our marquee newsletters. You would be surprised, first of all, how high the percentage is of people's emails that give us that are good, and what the engagement is with the newsletters. And once we have your email, not only can we pull you into the site by actually sending our content out and having you link back, we are also able to market to you, because email marketing is our #1 source for how we, even more than the paywall, for how we get people to subscribe. So finally, it's great to have people come and get people to read our content more, and we still make most of our money from advertising, but our digital subscription revenue is a rapidly growing percentage of it. And ultimately, we want to predict what users are most likely to pay, so we can go ahead and target them in order to get them to pay. And so we embarked on something we called the Month Zero project. So what we wanted to look at was, how do subscribers behave in the month before they subscribe? Just like joining a gym impacts how much you exercise, you can't look at what people do in the first month after they join a gym. We don't want to look at how they behave in the first month after they subscribe. So we actually looked at subscribers in the month before they subscribed and compared their behavior in the previous month to equally engaged users who ended up not subscribing. And in doing so, we were able to identify the type of content and the type of behaviors that these users over-indexed, and then we were able to therefore target that type of content and those behaviors for off-site marketing, as well as email marketing and in-house marketing. And this is an area that we're relatively early in, but I think that it presents a huge opportunity as we create custom solutions. As I said, step 1 is to get them in. Distributed platforms play a key role in that. Step 2 is to get them to more deeply engage, and then finally to get them to pay. So, and that's what that slide says. So I just covered my last slide. But so fundamentally, you want to spend both your dollars, but more importantly, your internal efforts and energies in terms of what platforms should you be targeting, what technologies should you be investing in, what should the design look like, all with the ultimate goal, what platforms you target, how you reach out to that, what content you put on those platforms is all related to getting unique visitors. The technology, the page design, and the marketing is all about deepening that engagement. And then finally, the outreach and the paid ad campaigns is about getting people to pay. And that's what I wanted to cover today.
Beth, please, yes, have a seat. Dan, would you please join us here on the stage? Since we are all American, I guess we can, and I hope my English works for you guys. All right, I hope for the audience, but you can get translations for my English. Okay, we have the mics. Very nice, thank you so much. Oh, let me get the, because we have not, that's fine, thanks. So, we have a lot to talk about. Deeper engagement, that is like the common sense that we could take from both of your talks. We have one question that we've addressed before we actually sat down and planned this panel was, what are you actually doing when media more and more becomes homeless? Because all the data that you're fetching, all the data that you're collecting like very aggressively will be near to zero if you put all your content onto Facebook, or you actually leave it to them what they share with you or not. So how is that strategy working for you, since I think you post everything off the Washington Post, everything, every single article onto Facebook? Why are you doing that?
So I know Dan will have something to say about this because we actually chatted about this back in the States when preparing this presentation. So there are different answers for different people, I think, to channel Dan. So we, as the Washington Post, are blessed in the sense that we are a big media organization and we're able to have conversations with platforms like Facebook and like Apple on an ongoing basis. For us, and this is where it just has to be, you just have to decide where you're willing to make the trade-off. So for us, now at this point, the data we get from Facebook, and actually to be clear, we have our own Omniture tags on Facebook, and they don't give us everything that we have on our own site, but we have our own tags and it gives us a lot. So we are actually, now we can't match those people with what their behavior is on the site, but we had a lot of conversations with Facebook about what had to happen in order for us to go all in. And I think we are one of the only publications to go all in on Facebook Instant. And I know that that's a pretty controversial thing. We're obviously making trade-offs in the sense that we now meter traffic coming from social, but we're unable to meter Facebook Instant at the moment. However, what we've found is actually the ad revenue we get programmatically from our content on Facebook actually outperforms the programmatic revenue that we get on our own site. So given the fact that we're doing well in terms of ad revenue, and we have a reason, we're comfortable with the level of information we're collecting about people reading our content, that's why we've ended up where we are on Facebook.
Dan, I know about you. You're having a slightly different approach. Please share with us what's your thought on what we call here in Europe homeless media, that you distribute your media, but you don't own the platform anymore.
Well, it has a home. It's Facebook. And I'm a bit of a alarmist on this, and I apologize for that. I think the Washington Post will be one of the winners that Facebook picks. But that's the situation I think we're heading into, where Facebook will decide who the journalistic winners will be. And I don't think that it'll be much fun for those who are not picked. And I worry a lot about the power that a couple of major companies are getting over the journalistic process, and I will continue to worry about it. But for the Post, I can understand it very well. I hope for your sake and for mine, as someone who has come to believe that the Post is now America's best newspaper at the moment, I'm desperate to see that at some point Facebook doesn't decide, oh, well, you're doing so well, how about we get more of this? And who will be in the position of more leverage at that point? You had leverage going in because they wanted what you do. How long will you have it? I don't know. And I just worry that the news industry is somewhat trapped. I don't have a good answer.
Maybe a short reply to that before we turn to our audience questions?
I think that those are totally fair concerns. I think the question is, I see it largely like the migration from print to digital. There were folks that, we still make an awful lot of money on print, but there were folks that just absolutely dragged their heels, only put limited content in digital or whatever, and I think that was not the right strategy. So it's hard to know, by holding back, by trying to slow the process, is that going to solve the problem or just cause you to be further behind?
So let's dig into the audience questions. The first one is pretty easy. May we have your presentation?
I'll have to ask.
You have to ask. Okay. Yeah. So just follow. Folgen Sie einfach Media Lab Bayern bei Twitter oder Facebook, and we're going to publish it.
Oh, okay, then yes.
No,
okay.
No, we're going to let you know if if we get it or not, if we're getting our hands on it.
Got it, okay.
Yes.
My answer is yes.
We're polite. We're polite. Okay, so let's have the first question, which comes from Robert. Robert says, predicting the behavior of readers, customers. What are the consequences for your content? Does your content shift into a new direction compared to yesterday?
Yes, I think that's true. And I don't want to overstate kind of where we are on that. I mean, we have lots that we could move forward on, but I think that one of the things that we've done is we have a group within the newsroom that's now 15 people that not only is constantly tracking real-time data to figure out what to push on platforms, they're also looking at trends on the internet to have a quick strike team turnaround to report on things that are popping up on the internet but may not yet have shown up in traditional media.
And do you see a danger that we're just too data-driven, that we actually lack sight of something that is maybe missing within the data?
Well, if the question is whether we will end up putting things out that are of dubious quality journalistically, that's certainly part of it. We've been doing that for a long time as an industry because tabloids have been selling better than serious newspapers. So, I would pray that big data doesn't turn more journalism organizations into toxic waste dumps like the Daily Mail. But I do believe that journalists have to weigh this carefully, and I hope will come out on the side of doing what's right for their communities.
Beth, could you please give some, I'd say, other examples of what Jeff Bezos has changed since buying the Post?
Yes, first of all, you have no idea. It's easily the most startling moment of my professional life when I was called in and Catherine Wamos said, we have some surprising news. We're selling the paper to Jeff Bezos. But I can just say that having Jeff as a boss has been nothing but a blessing. He talks to us every 2 weeks for about an hour. Marty is completely in control of the
Marty Baron, the editor,
is completely in control of the editorial side. But the things are, he has provided us with some funding, but I promise you, not nearly as much as people think we have, and we are really having a good year financially. And that's the beauty of being a private company. I don't have to tell you anymore, but I promise you. But the thing is, he has really set these big goals for us that seemed ridiculous before, but it's amazing that we've actually, I remember he said, okay, I want you to have 100 million readers in the United States. At that time, we had something like 35 or 40 million. It seemed insane. And here we are, just over and over again. It's sort of think big, support a real technology focus, and just kind of enthusiasm and encouragement. So
I'm gonna do some fact checking now. A bird tweeted to me that Jeff Bezos said and mentioned in one of your talks that he wishes that the staff of the Washington Post grows a little bit more badassness.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
badassness.
He wants that. That actually, he was thinking of that as actually our motto. So kind of a badass. So yeah, no, he uses the term swashbuckling, and I think actually on this note, Jeff has created a great balance between this sort of data orientation, move fast, but I think, Dan, he's absolutely committed to the types of investigative journalism. Marty has been given freedom, the work that David Farenthold has done that does not yield fruit in a short period of time in terms of driving uniques. And it's a rare owner out there that I think has, lets people achieve that balance.
We have a question which popped up earlier, which was how do you make the data visible to the editors? Are there tools that you're sharing with the editors so that they can see how their story works, and how important is that?
Yes, that's sort of, I could give you a really lengthy answer, but I won't. So one thing is there has to be commitment within the newsroom. So back to Marty Baron, the editor. He is a very data-oriented guy, and he reads the daily reports, I can assure you, at 5 o'clock in the morning, because if there's a problem with them, we'll have multiple emails by the time we wake up. So we provide...
And if I can jump in there, there's also a Marty bot. You have a bot, like a robot, that has the face of your editor-in-chief.
I will show anybody that wants to see it afterwards, but actually, so that is actually, we use it for content published. When people are on deadline in Slack, if you're coming up to your deadline, the Marty bot pops up with a warning from Marty that you better push your piece out because it's time. So yes, so people are getting data on Slack we have over 200 daily reports. We have real-time metrics everywhere in the newsroom. And as I said, it's great to have all those reports. You have to have a commitment throughout the newsroom to use them in order for them to be worthwhile.
This machine learning stuff actually is starting to really frighten me as a journalist. Like when even like the editor-in-chief gets replaced by a bot, like seriously, we're in deep trouble. But anyways,
Marty's got plenty of other things to occupy.
He does,
time
okay,
with, yes.
very well. Like getting an Oscar for his spotlight achievement. Very well. How do you make data easily available? We had that. The future of Facebook. I mean, seriously, do you want to like? Do you think that this is gonna become a more like a bigger partner, such as a black hole, but blue, that everything will vanish into? Or do you think with the efforts that you are doing, you're becoming more independent from platforms such as Facebook again?
I mean, I hesitate to predict the future of Facebook, but I do think a rising tide floats all boats in the sense that we're just seeing the overall increase in the consumption of news content across lots of platforms. And Facebook is a huge source of traffic for us, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of other sources. So I don't think the end is nigh in terms of Facebook becoming the single source of content, news content for the whole world, but they are obviously a major player.
Then, since we're about to have to head to the final panel here, I don't want to let you go without talking to you about what's going on in Washington, what's going on with the digital media, with Donald Trump, and how was that even possible? Is that something that you'd say, like this post-fact society is like something that is like, that had to come along with social media, with the way that we're communicating today, that facts don't matter anymore? Or how would you explain that to a German audience, that a phenomenon like Donald Trump just overruns even the media? I mean, he didn't even, he didn't care. He just tweeted whatever he wanted, and the media just had to follow because, he was bringing ratings.
Well, Donald Trump is a creature of the media as much as overrunning them. His TV show for many years, and for about 18 months, CNN and other cable channels basically would put him on pretty much all the time to say whatever he wanted without any fact-checking or pushback, and they did it because it generated ratings. If journalism does go down for good at some point, I think on the tombstone the epitaph will be what the head of CBS said along the way, which was talking about Trump. This is really, I'm paraphrasing, this is really bad for America, but it's really good for CBS. That feels like a fitting epitaph for journalism. But Trump he understands the media much better than any candidate I've ever seen.
So this is not just to blame the social media, but also like the legacy media?
Well, I don't think Trump would have reached the point he reached without powerful assistance from legacy media. And again, I don't believe in the post-factual society. I post in the sense of after, and not Washington. But and thank God we have news organizations doing factual work. So it's the post-factual work that's the real stuff here. And I think we just have to be better at helping people understand that they shouldn't trust everything they see, that they should be skeptical of everything, but use judgment and a whole other group of media literacy techniques. But is this going to change quickly? No. We're in for a long, hard struggle to get people to at least be able to listen to things that they don't want to believe. Right now, we're increasingly seeing people who choose to believe something and ignoring anything else about that.
So we're all in that game, on that path that will take maybe forever, constantly updating our inner iOS or OS. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Beth, Diaz, and Dan Gillmor. Thank you for coming to us. Thank you.
So much.